Good morning, guys, and welcome to the podcast. I'm really delighted about today's guest, Anders Hansen. This is a sponsored episode, and he is a internationally recognized influencer. He's also a seven-figure transformation CEO. He's the CEO of Real Magic, and what's interesting is we're going to talk all about mindset and how he has revolutionized personal transformation and breaking through mental limitations. I'm really happy about today's mindset talk. So, Anders, welcome.
Thank you so much, Christopher. I really appreciate it. And thank you for having me on. I love that you've created a platform that actually dives deep into the topic of financial freedom, because as I've learned, that is at the top of the list for most people when it comes to goals. So I appreciate you for that. And for everyone listening, do me a favor and leave Christopher a 5-star review for his wonderful podcast so we can get this word out to even more entrepreneurs that need it.
I really appreciate that. And so, talk about your background, your journey, your expertise, and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a lot of entrepreneurs, they want to expand, they want to grow their impact and influence. But many of them are stuck in the trenches of strategy. They've tried all these sorts of programs and it doesn't really sort of move the needle anywhere. Well, that's, and I've done the same. I've been stuck in the trenches of strategy for a long time. And that's what I help people with today, to grow from a different place, where we help entrepreneurs grow from a more conscious place where they can transform how they lead and grow by utilizing their mindset and those limiting beliefs, shedding those in favor of a new model, and without that hustle and hype that growth sometimes comes with, And I use what I refer to as my illusion to integration framework to do that. That's it, and that's not where it started for me, though. That's a far cry from where I began. I immigrated from my native country of Denmark back in 2006. And I arrived here in the US with 2 suitcases and a deck of cards. That was my last representation of being a magician. I was performing magic for a living. And I got my work visa here, rebuilt my career in magic. I performed on cruise ships and television. And then I crashed with my health, actually, back then. And I learned the importance of mindset. And I started becoming really fascinated with the power of the mind and what we can create once we really leverage our mental tools properly. And at that time, I decided to work with what I then referred to as the best in the world in personal development. And in 2016, I attracted Bob Proctor into my life, and he was widely regarded as the foremost authority in the world on human potential and mindset. And he and I co-created a program together, and we launched that to the world. And we've now helped over 10,000 entrepreneurs and people with their mindset through our award-winning programs and live events. We've generated a little north of $12 million in 7 short years. And I lead a team today of wonderful people who are all committed to helping millions in the world lead happier, healthier, and wealthier lives. And that was the short version of the story, Christopher.
Really interesting. And, before we get into kind of breakthroughs and just kind of quantum transformation, and you mentioned, I really loved how you mentioned you attracted Bob Proctor into your life. I want to delve more into that. Most of the people I talk to are a lot of startling statistic. A lot of people are struggling, and it's kind of like the 1% are even getting more wealthier, and then kind of 99% now we have artificial intelligence and just these grim statistics. So what is the problem with today's generation? Just mindset. People are very dim about the future. They feel like there's no hope. What's causing all of this?
What's causing that? And that's such a great question, Christopher. In my opinion, what's causing it, after having worked with 10,000 people, I see a pattern. And the reason why most people are stuck, it's not the circumstances, it's their perception of the circumstances. And it's because they let whatever is going on outside control the way they think and feel. And that becomes how they act. So they're stuck in that loop. So we have a conscious mind and we have a subconscious mind, and then we have the body we live in. So we actually live on 3 planes of existence. And most people don't understand that. They have so many mental illusions, as I call them, in terms of who and what we are. Most people think they are whatever is reflecting back to them from the mirror. And that's not us. That's the body we live in. And so that mind we've been given has the freedom to reason inductively, to create new concepts. I believe we're at the precipice of the biggest breakthroughs in consciousness, in human consciousness. And I think people that are fear-based about it are living with an identity anchored in the past. I'm sure there were a lot of people fearful too when the tractors came along way back when and replaced a lot of people in in the agricultural space. But we grew as a species and we became more productive as a result. And we just need to understand the only limit we have are the limits we place on ourselves. That's it. It's been proven time and time again throughout history. A lot of great leaders throughout history have disagreed on virtually everything. But one thing they've agreed on is we become what we think about. And that starts with me utilizing my higher mental tools. So it's amazing to me how when I conduct a seminar or a Real Magic Live event and we have maybe 400, 500 participants in the room, I ask them if one person can stand up and do a sort of a small presentation around their mental tools. And there are smart people in the audience. There are psychologists, psychiatrists, there are doctors, lawyers. Very, very few people raise their hand, and usually they've been part of one of my programs. So we have 6 mental tools. We have reason, that gives us the ability to think inductively and come up with new concepts. Imagination, that takes us to a place we haven't been before. Perception gives us the ability to find opportunities in any challenge. If it's a big challenge, congratulations, there's a huge opportunity in it. You can't have one without the other. Then we have the will, the opportunity to focus on one thing at a time. That is most people's issue these days because we're distracted constantly. In fact, we're addicted to apps that rob us of our attention. So there's that aspect. And then we have intuition, which is a perfect mental tool that can tap into the infinite and download ideas. That's how Edison created the light bulb. He didn't know how. He just made a decision. He was going to invent a device to light up the world, and he downloaded what needed to be done. And then you have, of course, the last one is memory. Memory is perfect. There's no bad memory. There's a weak memory or a strong memory, but there's no bad memory. So these are mental tools, and we can strengthen them. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us unique. Intuition, AI will never be able to replace intuition. There's a spiritual side to us that most people neglect. And the people that live fear-based lives are people who are neglecting their spiritual side of themselves. That's where prosperity comes from. That's very hard for entrepreneurs to grasp as well, because they live in a very physical world where everything is strategic and everything is outside of themselves and all the answers in the spreadsheets or ChatGPT. And that's well and good. That can guide us. But the real breakthroughs come when we start utilizing what we already have within ourselves. That's what in my opinion, why most people are stuck. And we see that. We have clients. I had a client recently who broke free from 100,000 a month, and now she's earning $1 million in a month. She 10x her revenue in a year and a half because she learned to utilize the higher side of her personality in a different way. Now she's living inside out as opposed to outside in. The vast majority of people right now that are stuck, they're living outside in. They also don't have a clear goal. They have no idea where they're going. If you ask them what their goals are, they will answer in vague and non-specific terms like, oh, well, it's freedom. Well, what's that? Your subconscious mind doesn't understand that. It needs clear direction. Our brain needs guidance and direction as well. So we need to get clear on a goal. That gets us unstuck. And now we start to develop our higher side of our personality. That gets us moving towards that goal. And then obstacles and conditions and circumstances will give way.
Interesting. And that really brings me to the next question is, what were the specific mechanics that allowed you to attract Bob Proctor into your life, and how can people use those principles to, attract like money or health or success or all of these external things?
It's a great question, Christopher, and I wish we had more time. I'm going to distill it as much as I can. There's natural laws that we are governed by, and we can ignore them or we can live in harmony with them, but we can't disregard them. Like, we will pay the price. There's whatever we put out comes back. It's not just about thinking. It's called the perpetual transmutation of energy. That means energy moves from an energetic state to a physical state, back to an energetic state. There's a continuous movement of energy. A tree is a great example of that. That's one of the laws, which means everything is already here. If not in a visible physical state, it's in a non-physical state. Like a glass of water. I can take this glass and I can heat it up. The water becomes steam or air. It changes its rate of vibration, but it doesn't cease to exist. Everything is here. It's a hard concept for most people to grasp, but every opportunity is here. If you ask a quantum physicist, they will say we don't live in a universe. We live in a multiverse where multiple opportunities exist side by side until you choose. So I think that is the prerequisite to understand that we have freedom of choice. I can connect to an idea that represents an energy frequency that is so specific So we have to connect to a goal. In my case back then, it was to work with the best in the world in personal development. I was stuck. I was broke. I was owing $50,000 in stupid consumer debt. I was sick. My blood test said I was sick, and my doctor told me I was going to have it for the rest of my life. Nothing worked. But I had studied enough to know that I had freedom to choose and freedom to think different thoughts. I had an eviction notice on my door, blood test that said I was sick, and the debt. But I asked myself, what would I love at this point? And I would love to work with the best in the world. I didn't put a name to the person. I just said the best in the world in personal development, because I knew I was going to get an education in me. And so to answer your question, what did I do specifically? I practiced gratitude for that outcome in advance. That is hard for people to do, because they say, there's nothing in my life to be grateful for. Everything is terrible. With that attitude, we'll get more of the same. So we have to understand that we got to think different. When we think different, we will start to feel different. So there's a 4-step process. Your thoughts, which are yours, no one can cause you to think something you don't want to think. It's your choice. So I think a very specific outcome. I start and I see it on the screen of my mind. That will trigger emotions. Those emotions will change the way I feel. The word feeling is the word we've invented to describe our conscious awareness of the vibration our body's in. So my feeling state changes the way my body acts and behaves. When I'm in a feeling good state, I act on opportunity. I become more risk. I take more risks. I go forward. I take the leap. If I'm fear-based, of course, I retract. Provided I'm in a good frequency, I think different thoughts, I feel different things, I act differently, that also causes me to attract differently. The law of attraction is a secondary law. I can only attract to me what I'm in vibration with, what I'm in harmonious vibration with. That's why multi-7-figure earners love to spend time together. They vibrate at the same frequency. They cannot stand people who complain and moan all the time. They just don't want to be around them. And people that moan and complain all the time, they love other people who moan and complain because they feel at home. They don't even want to be together with the 7-figure earners, because who do they think they are? They're just bragging. So that's examples of frequency. And so the frequency dictates how we act and what we attract. And of course, that causes results to happen. Between the action and reaction is where we change our conditions, our circumstance, and our environment. And for your people who are watching on YouTube, this is the diagram of how the mind and body is connected. It was developed by a chiropractor back in 1934. And he said, we have a problem in the world. We treat symptoms in our life. We don't treat the main cause. Big circle is the mind. The little circle is the body. And so here we have our 5 senses. That's where most people live. They look at the bank account from last year or last year's results. They look at whatever, the blood test. But we can shut that down for a minute. We can actually choose what to think about. Then that becomes what we feel. That controls the vibration in the body and how the body acts. That's how breakthroughs are created. We had a participant in 2020. I mean, you experienced this as well as anyone else. The world went nuts. Everything was shut down. All businesses was like, oh, what do we do? I had a client. He had 3 bankruptcies behind him. So of course he had a lot of paradigms around loss. But he had studied these concepts with me in one of my programs, and he said, 2020 is going to be the best year I've ever had in 25 years. People thought he was nuts. You can't say that. That's bonkers. You can't just say that. He made the decision it was going to be the best year in his life, and he started utilizing his mental tools. He wrapped up the year with the best balance sheets he's had in 25 years. He was the first business in the world in his industry to reopen. He crushed it because he was on the forefront mentally. He didn't let whatever was going on outside control his thinking. And so you had people all the way back to the Great Depression. The Great Depression created a lot of millionaires in history. But there were also people that were shivering because they were believing everything they read on the news. So that's where we need to be, Christopher. We need to know what we want. We need to get emotionally involved in it. We need to make it a habit of priming ourselves. That's what I do on a daily basis. I prime myself mentally, emotionally, physically to be in the state of what I want. It created quantum leaps in my life and has done the same for all of our clients. So it's relatively simple. It's just not easy.
Interesting. And which brings me to my next question is, because I'm an avid student of spirituality, and there's this very interesting thing where it's like karma pays you back 10x, but dharma is your destiny. So that's like infinite. And so I was reading Deepak Chopra, and he was talking about quantum theory, and it just flew over. I didn't understand it, but you talk about how quantum transformation creates fulfillment. What is that?
It not only creates fulfillment, it also helps us fulfill our destiny in a beautiful way. So I had the great pleasure of also attracting Fred Alan Wolf into my life, and he is a quantum physicist, and he was sitting front row in one of my shows at one point on a cruise ship. And I had seen the movie he was in, What the Bleep Do We Know, many times. I was addicted to that movie because here was a guy who not only understood quantum physics, of course he did, he was a physicist, is a physicist, but he brought it down to a level where my mind could get it. And so I was fascinated with him. And then I attracted him into my life also on a cruise ship in the middle of nowhere. He was sitting front row in my show, and we started talking, and he said, Anders, and it turned out we belonged to the same magic club in LA. You know, it's nuts. But he said, reality is much like a magic show. When there is no audience, the magic doesn't happen. The moment an audience shows up, the magic starts. So for anything to happen, it takes a conscious observer. It takes consciousness to create anything. And so we make up ideas in our mind all the time. When infinite surrounds us, we make up constructs of lack, doubt, worry. All of these things is all governed by our old programming, which is literally locked up in every cell of our body. Now, quantum physics tells us that infinite surrounds us, and we are part of it, and it's part of us. We're not separate from it. We tend to believe it's me here, and it's you there, and the world out there, and it's poor me and the world out there, and it's not. Time and space are illusions. Everything is here. We can connect to everything at will. And that's really what it teaches us. And when we take that framework and apply it to our work that we do, we see these quantum leap happen. And a quantum leap is the movement a particle takes effortlessly from one place to another without any seemingly any effort at all. Just pops back from it. You can create 10x quantum leaps that way. And that's what happened to me. I turned my annual income into my monthly income in 11 months. And I had no idea what I was doing. I just did what Bob told me to do. But I realized that's what it was. It was connecting to a completely different frequency of what I really would want. He asked me in the beginning, and I think that is worth bringing in here too, Christopher, because most people don't understand this. We need to have a wants goal. Most people have a needs goal. If I just get out of debt, it's okay. If I just get this illness, just over that, then everything is fine. Bob asked me that, what do you really want? And I said, just get rid of this debt. He said, debt-free is still zero. I'm like, damn it, that's right. So he's like, what do you really want? Then if I have free choice, and he goes, you got permission to dream freely. What do you really want? Turn my annual income into my monthly income. I didn't believe I could do it. But he asked me the question, and I believed he believed I could do it. So I didn't believe in myself, but I believed he knew what he was talking about. He had done this for 60 plus years.
Wow.
And I followed his direction. And surely enough, 11 months later, like I said, that happened. Then I took my income over $1 million. And then we turned that from $1 million in a year into $1 million in a month. And I realized there's no end to it. And it's not about the money, of course. It's just the person you become in the process that it's about. It's about the growth we experience. And growth is deeply spiritual. Money is spiritual too. Business growth is spiritual. It all comes from one place. It comes through many different sources, of course, but it comes from one place. I mean, you understand that too better than it. You study Deepak. I love that because I don't meet many business owners or let alone podcast hosts that study these concepts so deeply. And everything needs to have a spiritual foundation. If it doesn't, it's incomplete, in my opinion, because we're spiritual beings. We can't ignore that part of the equation.
Yeah. And so the next question I have for you is, when you talk about attracting things, so for example, someone who gets into a car accident, or just someone who can't keep a steady relationship, or just like poor health, or just always in debt, are these things that happen to them, or are they doing things to subconsciously attract these things, or is it just universal?
It's such a great question. No, it's a great question too. I asked Bob Proctor that one time, and he had had a stroke at one point, and he was even in The Secret that talked about the law of attraction, impacted 500 million people, and he said, I had to reckon with that thought. Did I attract this? And what he said, and what I have come to understand as well, is that no, we don't necessarily attract it consciously. But what we may have been in, what have preceded that moment may have been a period of feeling frustrated, feeling angry, feeling regret, feeling guilt. Guilt is probably one of the worst destructive emotions. Those emotions can only bring with it reasons to feel more guilt, more broken, more this, more that. So we will attract anything in harmony with that emotion. Andrew Carnegie, which at the time was the richest man in the world, told Napoleon Hill when he wrote Think and Grow Rich with him that any idea that's held in the mind, that's either feared or revered, will eventually begin to clothe itself in the most convenient and appropriate form available. So what he was saying is, whatever it is, if it has an emotional component to it, you'll attract something to validate that feeling. So I don't necessarily consciously sit down and say, I hope I get a flu next week. We don't do that. But I do think that we are letting ourselves slip into emotions that are not very constructive. For that reason, I've practiced gratitude now for my journal is, it's at day 2,390 in a row of practicing that. And I never let go of it again since Bob taught me. It changed everything because gratitude overrules fear, doubt. We talked about fear earlier, about the economy and where the world is heading. There's a collective energy field around us, and I take part in that. And if I let fear control me, I create more of what we don't want on a global scale. So as long as I take responsibility for my thinking and my feeling, my life will get better, and I will also contribute to betterness around me. So that's it. Practicing gratitude. It sounds simple. It's just not easy.
Yeah, really fascinating. If people wanted to learn more about you and just to collaborate with you, follow you, work with you, how could they do that?
So if you're following along and you are a high achieving entrepreneur, business owner, coach, consultant, that you know you're meant for more, you know that next quantum leap is sort of around the corner, but something inside is keeping you stuck. Like you feel that there's something there that blocks you from the next level of work and the next level of success, then I want to help you change that. And first, you'll be able to download a Real Magic Reset Kit from me. And the first step is to figure out what is holding us back. Because I've identified 5 illusions, 5 mental blocks that keeps most people where they are at. So before we start charting a course about where we want to go, we first have to realize where we're at and what limits us. That's the first thing in the Reset Kit. The next thing is a powerful process where we integrate our goal into our subjective mind, and we learn how to prime ourselves with what I talked about before, our mental, emotional, and physical state. It also comes with the first module in one of our programs that teaches people how to build that winning mental attitude. And that's what we need as entrepreneurs. So to receive that Reset Kit, all you have to do is find me on Instagram or Facebook at Real Anders Hansen. So that's REAL and my name in one word, ANDERS HANSEN. And just type in the word financial freedom, and we will send that kit to you totally free. And it will have all the tools you need to really get started on this journey. And it's very effective. And it's only something we give away here on the podcast.
Yeah, really, I really enjoyed this, and it's such amazing to have such accomplished individuals such as yourself, and have this fantastic high-level conversation, and keep up the great work.
Thank you, Christopher. And I thank you again for creating this platform. I really feel like this is the time where entrepreneurs need to step up the inner work, and for you to provide this is just incredible and really inspiring. So thank you for all the great work you're doing.
Thank you.